Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Okay, today is going to be us trying to enter data into SPSS and try to run some basic analysis. I will show you around the SPSS tool and the kind of analysis you could do with it. Then later on, I'll provide a guide that gives you like a compendium for several other types of analysis you could run, like t-test, chi-square test, tests that has to do with categorical variables, and also tests that have to do with continuous variables. So I explained that. Now, when you say categorical variables, you're trying to say, like the way we've coded most of our items in SPSS is that we just a moment, like this extraction sheet we have for the HIV patients, data that was extracted. You see that, for instance, we classified this age as 20 to 25, 26 to 30, 30 to 35, then 36 to 45. So this you can classify this as a categorical variable. If that we collected age as discrete numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to any amount, then you could call that a continuous variable. Or if we took, let's say, something like height, something like distance, something like body mass index, something like weight, all of those continuous numeric kind of variables. If we took that, we could do a kind of test that aligns to those kind of variables. And if we categorize our variables, then there's a certain kind of test that we can perform. So going forward, I'm going to provide a guide that helps you differentiate to tell what type of test you need to perform for which type of kind of analysis you're trying to run. Because the thing is, when you're doing your analysis, you cannot just decide to say, I want to do chi-square, I want to do descriptive analysis, or I want to do Fisher's test, I want to do this, I want to do that. You don't just decide the kind of I want to do linear regression, I want to do let's say k-means. You don't just decide the kind of test you want to do, because each kind of test, the variables have to meet some certain kind of conditions. So we'll have a separate class for that, where we'll look at the different types of tests you can do and the kind of condition your data have to meet up with before you can run those tests. So, but going forward, for this class, we will learn how to put our data into SPSS and run basic descriptive analysis and charts. Okay, in the previous part 3 of the class, we're able to tell you how to transfer your questionnaires, something of this nature. If you have a questionnaire like this, how to categorize them and have them in this format. Let me look for just a moment. Okay, let me see if I can see that particular file. Or let me just run some basic analysis with this particular sample data. Then I now go on to use the data that we got yesterday from the Google Form questionnaire. Like I said, this data is for persons with HIV, pregnant women. We're able to get this data and classify them. And I told you in part 3 how to enter this data into SPSS. Like you see, for age, it's already been categorized. So when you come to your SPSS, you go to variable view. For age, for instance, you have the values. We did this in the last class, C0, 1, 2, 3. You have them as labels 20 to 25, 26 to 30. There's a problem here. Who can tell me what the problem is here in number 2, in the third label? What's the problem there?
The people in the value 1 that's 30 is also in value 2.
Good. So
Thank you.
there's,
They repeated.
yes. So you see anybody that's in category 1 is going to also be in category 2. Why? Because there's no exclusivity. So you must make sure that each of them are mutually exclusive. So I have to edit this guy and let this start from what? 31, right? 31 to 35, then 36 to 45, or 36 and above. So that makes sense. So if somebody is in 1, of course, he cannot be in 2. Okay, I think that's a correction here. Then for the male labels, male, female, 0, 1. Like I said, you could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or you could start from 0, 1. Whichever way, SPSS will understand the way you've coded them. And of course, for your measures, since they are categorical variables, you could take them as nominal. So you do the same for all the different variables. For the variables, we said the condition is that you make sure that you don't start with a number. You start with a small letter or a capital letter, but just for readability, you want to keep it neat. Then make sure you don't have a space, you don't have special characters. If you want to separate them, you could do them in this kind of case, or you could use underscore to separate them. For instance, if I say level underscore education, it's still going to go. But if I say level, copy this out. If I say level dash education, right? It's not going to allow that kind of character. If I say level space education, it's not going to allow that. But I prefer to use it this way without the underscore. So it's just depending on how you want to label your items. And of course, for the labels, you could have it exactly how you have it in the questions. The thing is that when you start running your charts, this is what you're going to be having in your X and Y axis, right? Your labels. So depending, you can be plotting hepatitis B status and gender. You can be plotting gender, let's say marital status and gestational stage, or YA and hepatitis B and C, like a composite kind of chart. You could do all of those things. So this is what is going to be on your X and Y axis. I think that's all about putting your data into putting your data as per the variable view. Then in the data view, you see now I have about 700 items. So this is kind of boring, but that is just the only way, right, to enter this data into SPSS. You could do this in Excel and copy paste into this place, but you must have coded this in variable view and understand how the zeros and ones you're going to be using in Excel. Once you type this in Excel, you could just come and you can paste, right? You see, if I copy all of this now, I could copy it or I could cut it. I could as well paste it. It's possible. You could cut and you could paste. It's going to paste. So I just cut this out and I pasted it. It works. So you could have this in Excel typed and you come to this place just at the very first button here and you paste. Everything is going to paste all nines, or you could just enter it directly to SPSS here. So what are you going to be coding? You're going to be coding the labels. So these labels that you have, the values, these values that you have, zeros and ones and two, depending on the respondent. So each row here represents a respondent. Each row represents a respondent or a case, right? Each row represents a respondent or a case, each row. So you have 700 cases, right? Like from what we are seeing, you have 700 cases. So for the very first person, 2, right? Meaning his or her age is what? 0, 1, 2, 30 to 35. That means that person's age would have fallen into 30 to 35. The second person, that same person, what is his gender? Female, 1. What's his marital status? If he's single, you write 1. If he's married, you write 0. So that's the same way you're going to enter all of the data this way for each person. But I do tell my students that if you really want to be fast, because this can be very, very slow process, if you really want to fast and can cover, let's say, 1,000 data just in 2 days, you want to enter your data in this format. vertically. For instance, you see business, students. This is still business. That's the way we did it when we entered this data. Business. So you have for business occupation, that is 0. So you can easily come on your SPSS and just say 000. What is student? Normally, I always print out this one and have it handy physically, so that once you enter your data, you're a little bit fast. So student is 1. So you say 0001 0000000. So you have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 zeros, 1, 1, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros. So if you go to SPSS, you come under occupation. Are you seeing it? Sorry, is it business? Am I right? 2, occupation 2. Let me confirm. Occupation 2. Okay, since when this data was entered, it was flipped around, right? Because somebody else entered this data into SPSS, it was flipped around. So the idea I was trying to say is that once you're entering this data, enter vertically. It makes you very fast. You see 2, 2, 2, 0, 2, 2, 2, 2, just like I said. I think this 0 became student because I think we reclassified the data for this occupation because we found more occupation in the data set. Are we following?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yeah.
Good. So you just enter it vertically this way. So it makes you very, very fast compared to if you enter the data case by case, because each line is for one person, each line is for one person. But if you just consider them as age, you just enter it, tap, 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 take it 10, 10 each, 10, 10 each, 10, 10 each. I can tell you that in 2 days, if you spend roughly about 4 or 5 hours, in 2 days, you could do up to 1,000 items. So if you have 5,000 cases, that is 5,000 respondents, this is the same way you're going to enter the data. So once you finish entering the data, you have something like this, just zeros and one, representing those values. And once you're done with that, the next thing you want to do is to start running some form of analysis. But before you start running some analysis, of course, this file is saved. And like I said earlier on, it's saved as .sav. File, you could save. What is important here is, I think, data. Let me see. I'm trying to look out for something. Analyze. Okay, just a moment. I think, just a moment. Okay, so you call it a code book. You go to analyze. You go to reports. You go to code book. So case summaries will give you something similar, but code book will give you what, if each of these variables are here by default, normally you move them into all of the variables that you want to work on. You could decide what the output should be, what type of item should you pick up, or you could use the default. If you need statistics, if you need all of these very basic items, you can indicate them, and this is what it is by default. Then you tap on OK. Once you tap on OK, it gives you the code book for this particular data set. So for hospital, which is the very first item, it's telling us that the values are for 0, which is Young General Hospital. It's 327 items that was recorded, which amounts to 46.7%. Then 1, which was the value for Maitama District Hospital, you had 257 items that was recorded, which contributes to 36.7%, right? And of course, it's a numeric variable, though we see it's a text, but the way it was done like a categorical variable, then done as numeric so that we can enter zeros and ones, right? Then you could see for the same thing for year, for gender. If you even have missing values, it will point that to you. So if somebody else is handling the data entry, you could point out and say, okay, gender, I think you didn't enter one particular item. So the person can go back to the data set, and scan through and see for hospital which item was missing. Let's see, hospital. Okay, this is it. So let's just scan through and see which particular item was missing. So the person can scan through and see which particular item, which particular case here was not entered. Let me go through again and see if I can catch a particular item. So you cross-check and make sure that in the original data set that there was actually no data for it. Okay, let me be very sure. Okay, I think, was it for hospital? No, it was not for hospital. Hospital was complete. It's for gender, right? Gender had missing value 1, right? So let's go back to gender. So let's see which was skipped. So the person can actually cross-check with the data set, the data sheet, and say which item was not entered. Gender, I can't find anything missing. Let me still scroll up to see if I can catch the item that was missing. I can't find any item, right? But saying missing value system, it's picking one as missing. Male 0. I think this can also be a mistake because I think at the end of the day, for this particular data set, since they were all females, pregnant female women, we remove gender from the data set. Okay, let me look for another one and see if I can trace a missing value. Missing value religion 1. Let me go back and see religion. Okay, started from 0 down. Or maybe I'm scrolling just too fast. Okay, yes, this is it. Cut it up. Okay, this is the row. Row 114. I think this is what we were missing. Can we see that?
Yes, sir.
Aha. So this particular row was what was missing. So I guess maybe that particular data in the exact sheet was not entered, or there was a mistake. So if it's very negligible, missing values, what you could do is to just tap on this button and clear, right? So that goes off. If you check your entire data set now, you should be having 699. If I check cancel this, I don't want to save. If I check my reports and check the code book, I should see something slightly different now. And that I should be seeing those missing value. So no missing value, 100%, no missing value, 100%, no missing value, no missing value. So it was that particular line. We could see if we see others. So this is what you can print out. You could just have this. You could tap this, right? Or you could just highlight everything or Control A. Each of these items, each of these table, you could copy everything and take it to your Word document, right? So you could print it, take off the lines that you don't need. Then whoever that's going to be in charge of entering this data, they could use it. So you can even do this code book before you start entering the data, so that it's easier for the guy or for the person that's going to be in charge of putting data into SPSS. Are you there? So this is what you have. So what I would normally do is that I can just take off all of this, right? Come backspace, shift cell up. Just have only this item like this, like this, like this, have it down for my report purposes, so that it gives me summary of all of the data I have entered. Okay, that's one. So that's one of the things you want to do as per getting your code book. Now, what other kind of analysis you could run? Basically, you could run some additional descriptive analysis for data you've already entered. So let us look at some of them. In the final lap of the training we're going to do on SPSS, we're going to explore things like transformation, computing extra values. You could compute an additional column in SPSS. We could do transformation. There are quite a number of things we could do in terms of working with dates, in case we need to subtract, let's say, a particular year from somebody's date of birth to get his age, in case the data that was gotten as per date of birth. So here we just enter the date of birth if the data was what was it called? If the data was date, if the data was date, once the data is being entered, it will be entered as date. So the question is that what about if we want to now do some computations? So that's where this data comes in. So we explore that. Then I've talked about transformation already. Then for graphs, there are several kinds of graphs we could do. But I want to do some descriptive kind of analysis. So in our next class, I'm going to be exploring different types of tests that is possible. I'll give you a guide. So you could do linear regression, you could do correlation, bivariant, that is two variables, either with a confidence interval or without a confidence interval. Then you could do regression analysis. For regression analysis, for instance, there are going to be analysis that has to do with numeric values. You cannot do regression analysis for categorical variables. So we're going to explore all of that. But for this data set that we have now, I just want to run some basic descriptive analysis. You go to frequency. You could say for all of the items, let me just run one for all of the items first. And let us just run some descriptive analysis for our data set so that we better understand our data set. Then before we start talking about some advanced kind of tests we can run. If you go to statistics, quartile will normally mean 1/4. So first quartile, second quartile, third quartile, and fourth quartile will be 1/4, 1/3, 1/2, and 4/4. That is 100%. So you could tick these, you could click on mean, you want to know the median, you want to know sum, you want to know standard deviation, depending on what your interests are. You continue the type of charts you want. Say, okay, I want a bar chart. I click on, do I want the chart values to be the frequency? That is count how many of those items I have, or just tell me how many percent. So I'll use frequency, I'll continue. You could leave others. You could tap in to see what options you have. You want to order them by the ascending values or descending, or in terms of the values, the way they came in to SPSS. So I'll leave it as default and now say, okay. So analyze, descriptive, frequency, decide which of the variables you want to run descriptive analysis for, and you hit okay. Once you do that, SPSS takes its time and presents a simple descriptive analysis for you based on all of the data that you have entered. So let's allow some seconds for it. It's going to load up and present to us descriptive analysis for all of the data we've entered. How many of us can still see the screen?
I can, sir.
Okay, so you see valid item 699, any missing value? No. See, for parity, we have 46 items missing. And yes, that is true, because for this particular data set, for some of the year, we found out that the hospitals, they didn't take in values for parity, right? For the mean, this is the mean. For you see, this mean doesn't make so much sense for age because we were checking at 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So it doesn't make sense because most of these things are categorical variables. So having to get mean and median wouldn't make any sense because you entered values, you didn't enter actual age. They were numeric value, but you took them as categorical variables. If you took them as scale, which means you had age or height as in 1, 2, 3, 4, mean will now mean the total sum of all the ages of all the persons that you have here divided by 699. True or false?
Yes, sir.
But this mean you are seeing here, which is actually irrelevant to our study, is 0 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3, I think plus 4. What was the highest? What was the highest we had for age? Okay, 3.
36.
So 0 plus 1 plus 2, 1 plus 2, which is 3, 3 plus 3, which is 6, divided by 4. So that's why you got that particular 1.8. So it doesn't mean anything much. But if we were collecting our data as actual age, it would have made sense, would have known what the mean is. But since we are picking them as categorical variable, then it makes no sense here. You see for age, you see for gender, you see for marital status. So it could give you a complete descriptive analysis for all of the data you've collected and goes ahead to give us bar charts for age. Look at those women, their age. Nice graphs. We could copy these graphs and paste them on Word document, or we'll copy the entire chart, right? Clean, nice graphs that we could use in our work. Because later on in the course, we're going to learn how to do reports. Because as an analyst, your goal is to provide intelligence, provide insights, provide highlights, tell a story about the data that you've already collected. So you see, you have for gender, of course, they're all females. For marital status, most of them are married. About 600 and something. If we indicated a percentage, it would have given us the percent. Then for most of them are business people. See the frequency for what's it called? For civil servant, teachers. You could double click on any of the chart to see more options that you could have, right? You could adapt this particular chart, right? You could reduce it. There's so many things you could try out, right? Just to make your chart exactly the same way, exactly the particular way you want it. You could alternate, right? You could flip the charts. You could transpose. Let me try that out. I think where is that option? Okay, add the reference line to the x-axis. Are you seeing? So you could add something here. Reference line. Let me apply. Cancel. Housewife. So there are several things you could try out. You could try all of those functions and see what's possible. Okay, this is transpose. Tap on this button, you see you could transpose the chart and you have something like this. So all of these guys here, they are there are several options for you to try out what's possible for you to harmonize this chart, get to what you want to have at the end of the day, then before you can now like export them to what's it called? You see that particular chart now, you see it has been adapted to what I did earlier on. For level of education, you see most of them secondary school leavers, then a few of them tertiary. Religion, hepatitis B, you see a lot of them had negative. And the study was about prevalence of hepatitis B in pregnant women across, I think, 4 areas within the federal capital of Nigeria. So you see most of them returned negative. So I think that's all for here. You see the gestational period. So I will pause the video now. In the next section, we'll run some more additional charts before we call it a day. Any question?